If you could wear a work of art like the Mona Lisa or a painting by Van Gogh, would you do it? Around the 17th century, a small village in Japan became very famous. This place is called Arita. Arita is a small city in Japan dedicated solely to creating porcelain art. And I mentioned the 17th century so you can realize that this craft has been around for over 400 years. But why am I telling you this? Because here I have two watches with dials made from Arita porcelain. Generally, when we think of Seiko, we remember their diving models, the prospects with aggressive designs and spectacular dials. But I think we forget sometimes the delicate craftsmanship of Japanese culture. Now, before I continue, there is a big difference between ceramic and porcelain. Essentially, porcelain is a much finer clay than ceramic, and it's fired at much higher temperatures, resulting in a greater shine. The process of creating porcelain is extremely complicated because it can crack at any moment. But it becomes even more complicated when making discs of an exact size as the material becomes fragile and the sizes start to vary, which is where the artisan comes in. In fact, on the label we can see the artisan's name, which is Hiroyuki Hashiguchi. This gentleman has a workshop in Arita and specializes in making dials for Seiko, which begin as a large matte disc that goes through a first firing in a kiln. And when they come out, a glaze is applied, in this case a bluish tone. Then they are put back into the kiln, then holes are made for the hands and a bit more glaze is added and it's fired again. It's a process that it's 100% artisanal and 100% handmade, which gives these watches significant value because in reality, if you notice, you don't really just have a watch. You literally have a work of art on your wrist. Just like your grandmother displayed her collection of china plates, it's basically the same, except you can wear it on your wrist. There are many techniques to decorate the dials that are very special. For example, enamel, guilloche, or in this case, Arita porcelain. What impresses me the most is that these processes are generally reserved for watches at a much higher price point. Guilloche, for instance, is made with a special lathe called a rose engine. There are very few in the world and even fewer people who know how to use them. All of that handcrafting, just like when we talk about enamel, is a completely handmade and extremely delicate process. But as I said, all of these processes are associated with a much higher price because paying artisans with the expertise to create these works of art is not cheap, especially since, as mentioned, they are entirely handmade. So being able to have this level of attention to detail and craftsmanship in a watch with an average price below $2,000 is astounding. Especially when we're talking about Swiss brands that would easily charge you 10 or 20 times more for something similar. In this specific example, we have complications like a power reserve and a calendar, and a porcelain dial with blue enamel. And above all, it's a limited piece with only 2,000 units worldwide. Considering the Seiko market, having 2,000 pieces is extremely limited, which obviously gives you a significant sense of exclusivity and status, but it remains an incredibly affordable watch with a pretty good movement. We have a decorated rotor, sapphire crystal, and overall a watch with excellent features for under $2,000. I challenge you to tell me what other brand you could find a completely handmade artisanal dial made with 7th century techniques for this price. I think it's impossible to find something similar. And as I've said for a long time, this is the kind of range where Seiko offers so much for your money. Now, as beautiful as this watch is, I would have changed a few things. And I know someone is going to come along and say that I think I'm too good to correct Seiko because it has happened before in other videos about other brands. But I'm just sharing my expertise and knowledge. Everything in this watch is of very high quality. The bracelet is perfectly finished, the case as well, the dial is spectacular and very traditional. But I think Seiko tried to cut some costs. It's very noticeable in the hands. If you're going to go to such lengths to make a completely handmade dial where the creation process is extremely long, tedious and delicate, why would you put painted blue hands on it? Why diminish the quality of these watches with that little detail? They could have easily put heat blued hands that would have given that touch of exceptional quality at an unbeatable price. Because overall, everything in this watch is basically perfect. And that detail slightly undermines it in my opinion. It's definitely not a deal breaker, but it's something I see and think, well, I mean, you get it. It's those little details that could elevate this watch to a completely different level. I mean, if they added an extra blue crocodile strap like the one I added, I think it would have been a home run. I feel it looks spectacular, but that's just my opinion. Many people ask me why I praise Seiko so much, when according to them, there are better brands. The thing is, I've always been very critical of Seiko, and when something doesn't sit right with me, I've said so. But it's this type of piece that makes you think. Is there someone who can offer you something better in this price range? And I truly challenge you. Tell me another watch you could find at this price with better features and characteristics. It's really complicated. But what do you think?